psychedelic category. And indeed, there may higher level you may find stimulation there, but the general thing is the art of the substitution on the ring modifies the nature and defines the nature of the action. Specifically, I don't know. I cannot be specific to the molecules you're mentioning. We'll probably get to a piece of paper and begin scribbling structures. But there are many, many things that are potentially active as psychedelics and have not been assayed, have not been tasted. The whole art of taking an unknown compound and beginning to find out what its action is going to be, it sounds naively simple. You just start taking more and more of it until you turn on. But the truth is your turn on may be a convulsion, it may be sedation, it may be all kinds of other types of actions, so you have to sneak up on a new compound. So if you're at all considering looking at some of these things, I stress be extremely cautious. If they have not been taken in man before, preliminary animal screening to me is worthless. I gave it up 25 years ago. I killed a number of mice and felt very bad about it. But you have to take yourself as the test animal. And that means you start at a level that you are confident will have no action whatsoever. And if you're not that confident, you start at 1,000th of that level. You start at a small amount and be patient. And all be aware of the fact that if you take an unknown material too frequently every day or every 2 days, you may build up a lack of sensitivity to the responses, and in essence, immunize yourself from response. It's a long process. Fortunately, you can do half a dozen things, different compounds not the same time, but on sequential days, and the chances of cross tolerance is small. But if you are getting into any new materials based upon basic new ring groups, go with extraordinary caution and keep good notes.
Okay, can I make one comment in regards to the MDMA and memory, that the other person posted? I went through a period where, I probably recklessly used MDMA regularly, and I never noticed any memory loss due to that. My father, who's never done a drug in his life, starting at age 50, he definitely started to decline in memory, So I just thought that would be a good comment to make in regards to that.
Memory. I think that we didn't quite get the full question about memory loss, but on the other hand, we should go on to the next questioner because otherwise we're not going to make it.
First, a clarification. I was at the Berkeley patients group when you spoke, and you recommended a research chemical. I think it was 2CT2. Is that correct?
2CT2 is the first of the active phenethylamines, yes.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is a bit more... You also mentioned a story about scopolamine. Mm-hmm. Does that have any relation with datura?
Scopolamine is a component in datura.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yes. So there are about a half a dozen quite strangely different plants that have scopolamine as the major active component. Scopolamine, though, is much more of a hallucinogenic than the psychedelic, in that you see things that are not there. You do not recall too well what you did see, and it is a memory loss, an amnesia type of chemical. Never take scopolamine. 2 warnings on scopolamine. Don't ever use it if you're without a babysitter, because you have to go through doors that are never been opened before, and they're still closed when you go through them. So you have someone to pick you up. And the other thing is about 1 person in 5, maybe 500, is hypersensitive to scopolamine. So if the person's never tried scopolamine at all before, try it at a tenth of the expected dosage. And if there's no action, then you go to a normal dosage.
What is the worst thing that can happen if you're hypersensitive to it?
It'll be active at 1/10 the normal dosage. It's a potency.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering what your opinion is on ibogaine, and are there any other molecules, analogs to it, that might be useful for drug addiction and things of that nature?
On ibogaine, my personal response to it was quite negative, and I chose not to pursue it very far. But that was 40, 50 years ago. I have heard of the actual ceremonies, the rituals that are performed in in Africa with the Tabernanti iboga. And who's our Italian friend who went through?
Giorgio Samarini, I think.
Yeah. He went through them twice. And it's, in essence, they use it as a...
It's a death experience.
It's a death experience, yes. They use it as a way of embracing the transformation from the early child to the adult, and that is used in that ritual. The work that's being done with it in the treatment of drug addiction is, I believe, showing a rather good promise. I know of 2 or 3 cases that have been quite successful. There are a couple of cases in which the person has reverted. I know of a case where the person reverted to his original drug that he was addicted to, but that because of his social surrounding. And then there's the situation of that one horrible, sad thing in France.
Oh yeah. I don't know how many years ago it was, about 5 or 6. There was a government-approved research study going on in Switzerland, studying the effects of MDMA. It's a group of psychiatrists, and somewhere along the line, one of the psychiatrists, whose name I will not mention, for some reason took one of his patients. There's a woman who was severely depressed. He took her to France, or they both were in France. In any case, that's where the experiment happened. There was no contract made. Now, I wrote as much as I could in the second book, Tikal, about making the contract with the patient before you start on any trip or any experiment with any consciousness-changing drug. And the contract, I think, is vital. Well, no such thing was done. And what he gave her was ibogaine, but it was thought for quite some time afterwards by the various authorities that he'd given her MDMA, because he was one of the psychiatrists in this research project. So in response to that first impression, they shut down the Swiss research for quite a while. In any case, he gave this lady ibogaine, being in a state of emotional pain and having been there for a very long time. She apparently saw the death door, which is an experience some of you have had and I have had, and it's always welcoming, and it tells you, this is the way home when it's time for you to go. It doesn't pull you in, it's just there. And she must have seen it, and she went. Now, most people, when they are not supposed to go over into the afterlife, are sent back. But she never came back. So the psychiatrist had a dead patient on his hands. And I believe personally that ibogaine is a tremendously powerful drug, that it should never be used with a deeply depressed patient, and that at all times a contract should be made between a psychiatrist and patient.
Why don't you tell the underlying terms of that
No,
contract?
because we don't have time for the full thing, and they can read it in Tikal. Get Tikal out of your library. And I've explained it there.
At the time you wrote Pikal and Tikal, the analog laws were on the books, but they had never really been enforced and were more or less kind of theoretical. In the time since then, a dozen or two of the analogs were commercially available. And last summer, in Operation Web Trip, the DEA went and arrested a bunch of people. We got a guy who's doing a life sentence now. What do you think the implications of these cases are for future research like what you do?
Whoa.